principles on the East African community, a member of GCA, World Bank Eminent Persons Group on African Integration, Chairman, Federation of Uganda Consultants, Chairman, International Development Consultants, a member of the Committee of the Fast Tracking of the East African East African Federation, among other credentials. But the one key one that I want to specifically remember is this, that in 1986, Professor Tulya Muhika and a few people, 2 from Kenya, 2 from Uganda, and 2 from Tanzania, sat in room 541 in the East African Community headquarters to decide what integration, where should East African Community move. That is defining the ground rules to go to the new cooperation, which represent Articles 6 and 7 of the treaty. So he was there from the drafting and defining the principles. I was highly privileged to be part of that team. Professor Tulya Muhika, take the floor.
I have Mother Nature. Oh. Thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me. I prefer to stand because I'm slightly younger than the previous speaker. Well, Mr. Facilitator, I'm something of a quandary because we were supposed to have presented this and almost gone through it. So I'll start with a few environmental remarks. This paper, which I'm going to present, is available, or should be available, electronically to the Secretariat. So the Secretariat will, if they have not so done, circulating for all of you. It's quite long, slightly longer than the one my colleague and the fellow professor presented earlier, because I've had more time to prepare this. It covers a bit over history as indicated by the facilitator. Out of that paper, I have extracted a PowerPoint presentation, which is also quite long. A number of the issues in this presentation have either been touched on or covered. So in the interest of time, I will highlight right at the beginning what I'm going to concentrate on. Then I'll skim through the rest, since we are going to have the paper anyway eventually, and hopefully even have the PowerPoint presentation before we go into discussion. If you have anything that appeals to you, then you can come back to it afterwards, going through the paper. The most important thing, though, I want us to agree on is the hypothesis on which this paper is based. This one we have been debating since morning, and the hypothetical statement in this paper is there can be no successful economic integration without political integration. If we agree on that, we can put it down. If we don't agree on that, then we can debate it. Because this is the thematic statement of why we are here. So how do you define economic integration? That I'll deal with in a minute. And how you define political integration, I'll try. The reason is also following. But because the core functions of the state as per the social contract are law and order in the large sense, regulation of the economy, and delivery of services. Those are really 3 fundamental functions of any state. Once an economy is integrated with a regional one, somebody has to regulate it. Therefore, already by deciding to enter in the process of economic integration, not cooperation, integration, you are talking about political management at the regional level. This is where it is, the background to that. The next thing The rest I'll come back to once we have agreed. And this is, we are going to bear on this slide. In this slide, Jacob of mine as a psychologist, is still alive, at least historically. The European Union followed that. We are following it. What we are not following is this. The right-hand side is the key responsibilities for political supervision of each one of these stages of integration. So, when we come back to this, what I would like to suggest, Mr. Facilitator, is that is what I'm proposing, first of all, right? Can we amend it? Is it comprehensive? Can we add it? Once we have this full list here, the question is then, who manages each one of these roles at that level? Is it the part of the states, or is it the regional level? So we shall bear on that. The first one, and I'll come back to. And then towards the end, some of this is very historical. It will come out in the concluding remarks. I will indicate possible areas which we could cover in the future in defining the division of labor between the EAC and the partner states in the management of processes of economic integration of the East African community. So let's go back to the beginning. That is agreeable. There are three slides of emphasis. So the first one, which is as good as done, it is that figure there of the processes, and then how do we move this forward? Okay, so we go back and just skim through this. Because I prefer to have about an hour and a half of exchange. This is the dialogue, it's not a conference. We are not making presentations, we just make discussion. We have attempted to borrow a definition of economic integration, series of voluntary decisions by previously sovereign states to remove barriers to mutual exchange of goods, services, capital, and persons. You can say goods, services, and factors of production. That is the classical definition. The political integration, we had a revolution of powers to a higher level, regional establishment, namely sovereignty sharing. Or, if you follow us, in 1958, shifting certain national responsibilities and activities towards the new regional center. Either way, it means sovereignty sharing. I think in the course of work, which was left out actually, my secretary got this brief from a previous paper. I also was a member of the team of experts more recently, in 2004, last year, and we worked on the reports. So in the work on that report last year, we also invented some other phrase for this one. Previously it was sovereignty ceding, then sovereignty sharing, and I think, and now we are talking about creating effective sovereignty, making the sovereignty effective by through sharing. Now what you have is so small, like Uganda, that is not very effective. It's not talking, we have no sovereignty in effect. So the effective sovereignty you need can only come from numbers. There is safety and security in numbers. Whichever way you look at it, it is functionalization of sovereignty in effect. Why we integrate this has been covered by my friend and colleague, Professor Barigo. It is security. The security is three-dimensional. It is economic, it's political, and it is social. That's the primary purpose of integration. If you don't feel the need to be secure on these three, then you take it slow. Then you can take a labor attitude. And I think we are taking a labor attitude in East Africa and Africa. I've been a Pan-Africanist. That one was missing in my diagram. Since 1962, was inspired by the late Kwame Nkrumah, who by basic person, later on Marine Muhika Nyerere, who I will tell you, after the East African community collapsed, I persuaded to be the patron of the East African Cooperation Forum. Without Julius, the Marine Nyerere wouldn't be. The East African community or cooperation would not have been revived. Why? Because he was able to talk to politicians we could not talk to, namely the president of Kenya. Because we tried as a group, which I think people we talked about. We, the group, 2 Ugandans, 2 Kenyans, and 2 Tanzanians. We went around East Africa saying it was a big mistake breaking this thing. This was in the 80s. Talking to everybody, but we would not get through to the president of Kenya. And we had to go through Marine Julius Nyerere. We want to talk to him. Because in 1987 he was at war with Museveni. You see that shooting across the border. It was against. So, the political decision had to be made. The people may be for it, yes, the army may be for it, unless they take the Barego, Bismarck route. But the politician, a decision to integrate economically is a political decision. It cannot be, you can pressure them into it. We did. They will tell you that the Accord of 1993 was made of their own volition. It wasn't. So you can coerce them, you can do all kinds of things. In this paper, when you get it, you see the benefits. Apart from this security arises out of some of the outcomes of integration. Higher growth rate, social development, military might, that was mentioned earlier, and global influence enhanced. This will happen. That's how you secure a common area, economically, politically, and socially. You must have developed, you must have military might, you must have some global dynamic that is not so. This thing of I think you have talked about it. These imperatives, I say, they are mixed. The necessity, this affinity, they call it affinity of choice or affection. What I'm saying here is, it does not be mentioned. We must identify an immediate threat to not only the East African community, not only to Eastern and Southern Africa, the whole of Africa. This is one study that has not been done. This is what you say to the politicians. You go to them and say, why are you moving so slow? The house is on fire. But you didn't know. We have got the figures here. And this for our President Museveni, if you give him figures, he'll be very convinced. This projection is by 2015, Africa will look like this. You can even paint a map to look so small in the world. We have been stripped of all natural resources. But as you know, it has been stated that the Great Lakes area, within the country, so defined by the UN, is the most natural resources rich endowed in the world. But you see, by contradiction, it is also the poorest in terms of GDP per capita. So the richest is also the poorest. Sounds like a Bible. What the mystic is business, you usually to throw out abstracts. The first shall be last and the last shall be first. We also, we have already talked about a common language. Language was as emphasized as values and culture. We do need it. So this article, I can't remember the name of that. The article in the Twitter talking about Swahili being the lingua franca. I was not that committed. I insisted we must have it there. We must have a lingua franca in which we can discuss when we are negotiating with the Chinese and the Indians. Those are the upcoming threats. They are all like this, they are talking para. You must also say, sasa hatu Espanyol. Na wanasema hivi you also we have also talked now, that number one, now I'm saying you can cross it. Let's start with number two. We have already proved. But if you go and speak in English, you will be later. What is more, you cannot have this. You can't have values and culture without the language. They flow from the language, because the language, as I say in the footnote in the paper, I read it to you. Where is the paper? It says that the language determines what you think. It limits somewhere thoughts and imagination that determine the language you speak, and what you think about. You see, the content and the extent and the depth, they are determined by the language. So when you get the paper, you can read it. So it's very quick. The Swahili, we went to the Swahili Institute in Zanzibar. They assured us, this was almost a police. They assured us that if you give them any word in any language, they can give you a Swahili equivalent in about maximum 1 week. So this is a growing language. It can grow and absorb and take on new developments in the world. Then they were talking about globalization. They had just coined the word Utandawazi. So they can do it. And so we can sell this language even beyond the bounds of East Africa and make it an East and Southern African language, and eventually maybe even an African language. So that's a critical area. So the sooner we do more and much on the East African Swahili Commission, the Institute, and the rest, and the curriculum for primary schools and for secondary schools, the better. The sooner we do that, the better. In Uganda, I think a decision has been made in principle to make Swahili compulsory language for primary school education, but it is still a decision on paper. We don't have the wherewithal to implement it. We don't have the teachers, we don't have the curriculum. We have the curriculum, actually I've seen it at the national curriculum is all medicine. But the big problem is the teachers and the funds. Okay, so now we come to the subject matter of the paper, which is that there can be no, this process of economic integration, which in terms of economics would visibly stop here, and this is a complete political, cannot take place, not even the first one, without some kind of political integration. So this is you would say, the economic column, and that is the political column. Determination and management of agreed preferential rates. That's what the PTA is, preferential trade area. We still have those of us who are still in the COMESA, here present, participating, who have a preferential tariff rates to members of the COMESA. So you determine them, and there is a law of management. That's a political process. It cannot be managed by the business sector, by civil society, by academia. It is by politicians, government in power. Free movement of goods and services and removal of non-tariff barriers. When you have a free trade area, the internal tariffs between the states participating or necessitating a common area or neighboring each other. We remove all internal tariffs, but resume by and large tariffs within the South. But MTBs are even a bigger block completion of free trade. Whose MTBs are they? They are national. Who can do anything about it? The government. It's not the traders. Traders will complain. Say, well, we stopped at the border, at the roadblock, police, double checking that border, doing the same thing, offloading all your goods on the Kenya side, and on the other side. Who can rationalize that? Politicians. Comes from here, from 05. We've had a common standard of tariff. Is it working? Yes and no. Why? Uganda start with a list of over 100 items, exemptions. Kenya still subsidizes fertilizers. Tanzania charges levies for lorries headed into her trade area, especially in Namango, $200 per truck. So with this, it has worked very well. The rest is working fine. We are now trying to move to the old arrangement where all customs revenues were collected at the first point of entry, and then the revenue arising therefrom was distributed to the member states in the old treaty of 67 based Kabul. I have a copy of 1967 treaty. It was distributed among the partner states according to some agreed formula. It was actually basically the destination principle. It was one of the areas of conflict. Because if a piece of cheese enters through Mombasa, goes through Kenya, you can't tell where to go. Then who eats it in there? Because where is contentious. So, if we are going to have towards this old arrangement, we won't think of a different formula. I know some study has been done. I don't know what they are recommending. Anyhow, this is a very important factor. It is obviously between governments and has got to be managed politically, so that one as well. On the world common market, factors of production, we talked about them, free movement, harmonization of our national policies, regional policies, very critical. Because you can't have a common market where policies are divergent. This is not the same market. That's what went wrong with the old one. The old one has been created by the colonials. And was very much slanted in favor of the white settlers in Kenya. So these policies should have been reviewed at the time of independence. I'll say something about that when we come to application this afternoon. Then harmonization, then the laws. We do the policies first and then the laws. Otherwise the common market cannot operate. You can't have a common market where different laws are at work. We did a study, for instance, on NTBs, on agricultural produce in East Africa, in the 01. We discovered, to our horror, that all the 3 countries then of the East African community had a lot of laws that were anti-free trade in agricultural produce. The country with the majority of those was Kenya, with well over 100. All those laws have to be either abrogated or substantially amended. The majority would have need to be abrogated. Who will do it? It's the government. Business sector cannot respond. Robbery group will not. Cannot be robbery that should be done. And then the supervision must be regional. Because what you want to emerge out of that abrogation, harmonization is a regional law, which enables goods move throughout the common area under the same regulations. You don't change regulations once you reach Namanga. No. The truck loaded in Mombasa must go all the way through Uganda, Rwanda, and the Burundi if necessary, without changing regulations. So you have no common area of trade. So this is a very important. So once you reach this level of integration, of economic integration, you're as good as done. The other two are political. The other two are political because the currency of a country symbolizes the sovereignty of that country. And that's where, having done very well according to this list, the European Union seems to have slipped. The list here, they slipped because this became political. Those of you who follow, I think most of you, events in Europe, the final draft of the Lisbon Treaty of 06 had a very strong statement on which monetary policies and management of fiscal policy convergence was very strong. In a number of countries, starting with members of the Scandinavian face or group, plus 1 or 2 others, were up in arms. Well, the UK is not even a member of the Eurozone, but they were up in arms as well. What did they say? This is a federation through the back door. This is what that is cry. You want to cry. They said the draft was severely watered down until 05. It became nothing. Tony Blair, who had some interest to become the head of the European Commission, lost interest by then because there was nothing to manage. So the consequence is today. You can see the trouble the Eurozone is in. And so the Chancellor of Germany and President Sarkozy of France are saying, go back to the 03 block, we made a mistake. They indeed did. But it's highly political. This is a highly political level of economic integration. Economic integration is effectively ends here. The common market is the most important stage of economic integration. And if you want to know, somebody used the example of the Trinity. This is the God. The common market is the God of integration. When you need a spirit, the spirit must come. It must be, if the spirit is not in the politician, it's not in the political order, you cannot appease God. God will not be appeased. And the sacrifice, which is the Jesus, and the national institutional social system, political system, those are the sacrifices which must be made for this to happen. Why is this the God? Because the monetary union in itself is not an achievement unless you have a single market. It is actually a means of cutting down a transaction costs across borders. So, what it does for you then is to make the market more efficient. The federation centers all policies into one side, into the federal government. That's also a master stroke for efficiency. So what we have been doing, I'll tell you this one about the way the Muhika used to run, largely because I'm a Muhika. This is what the Muhika said. I think we follow this Masemo. With the pango, we go with him. Now, it says killing one big one is as good as killing two. Now, why did the Muhika come to this? The Muhika used to live by hunting. That's a long time ago. So, after you killed one, you carry it home with your dogs. There was a huge dog we called Sugar, that would be the lead dog, then you have a few others followed. Sugar would have a bear to start with animals, and then you have a big one, like an animal. You hunt one, kill it, carry it home, you divide it. Leg for the neighbor, now to give some to the neighbor. If you had a son who is married or bride, you give a piece, you have 2 wives, another one. If this meat is not enough to go around, you go to hunt again. Because everybody must have meat. This is why they say if you kill a big one, it will be enough. You don't have to go and hunt again because the process is the same. So this is what we have been doing. What we have been doing, and other people do. You set up this high-level task force. Negotiate for years with the 2, 3, 4, 5 established customers. We then catch it, small one. Another one, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, common market. Not enough. Now we have got a high-level task force, now monetary union. Why not go for the big one? And all of this will be best. Because, you know, here. Here. Is of course this arrow, this is what we have selected. But the deeper the level of integration, the greater the benefits. The federation is by far the most beneficial. This is the least. There are some benefits here, the federation, very marginal, hardly anything to speak of. Nothing to write home about. Why is the federation the most beneficial? Because it creates a complete common market. I've had arguments. We get so much because I opened a set map correspondence with a number of people in East Africa since last year. He said, Professor, why do we need a federation? Why can't we concentrate on infrastructure development, like power? One of them was from a member, prominent member of the Tanzanian Society. I won't mention his name, but he was also managing director of Tanzania Global. So those of our Tanzanians, I guess he is. He said, Professor, why was this when we came here, we were we are agitating about this federation? What we need is power. We need my factory. 3 days we don't have power, have 4 days, then it goes off. It's not enough, we ration it. I took him aside and told him, how will you manage an East African power grid if you have a minister for power in Tanzania, another one in Kenya, another one in Uganda, and one of them is half mad? Should you imagine the situation? Say the Uganda one is half mad. He switched it off in a fit of anger or something. And before we left this place, the Minister for East African Affairs from Kenya landed at the airport, JKIA, from a meeting again, and said, I'm tired of going to all these meetings. Kenya, I want to rationalize our membership of these bodies, including AAC. Investment is fair. See, a minister from one of the states can make a simple statement which affects all the others. So this is a problem. You need only 1 cent, which carries the total political responsibility for the management of the market. There is no effective way you can manage a common market fully. I've had this argument, especially from a number of my Tanzanian friends. Why don't we concentrate on full implementation of the customs union? You cannot. There will be no full customs union unless you have a federation. It will not happen. These MTBs, there are so many. There are over 500 if you count them up. Each one of our countries has got close to 100 on average. And they are all national. None of them is regional. They are all national. Those in Kenya are Kenya, those in Uganda are Uganda. They are all national. Until those nations die, as Jesus said, the big thing will not come up, the big tree. The seed, the mustard seed, must die. These nations must die so that the big tree comes up. These MTBs will never allow it to complete the customs union. They will remain. So you get one leader who is enthusiastic today, the next one may not be. He introduce his own. You must have. You must be able to talk and say, I can see the future. There is hope in numbers, there is security in numbers. Let's all go into it, we shall sort out the rest. If you don't really take that risk, you will not be that. And there's only people who can take that risk are the political leaders of the time. That's what happened in America. Not all Americans wanted it. A few people went around, convinced a few others who were politically influential, and they decided to form the United States of America. But back in those they had the threat, the Islamic threat. The British Army was still in the Atlantic, and they wanted to come back and recolonize it. And actually they attempted in 1806. So I can't have it. Cornwallis was defeated. But the threat of recolonization was there. Because they had a visible physical threat, they moved really hard to do it. That's why I go back to that thing. Do research on what are the threats of Africa. And let's deal with deal with the business. This is research data, you can criticize it, ask for another group to do the same analysis, see whether they come up with a different conclusion. That majority of it actually. So now other questions, oh, sorry, I thought that was from the facility. That is not. All right. As I said earlier, when we come to discussion, if anybody wants to comment on this one, you can put it back on the board and then you can comment on it. But I think this is meat for us. We go to what we do once we complete it, because I'll come to the brief to give the secretary. What did they tell you? They said, you go and do what? Develop this, they don't want this. That's what I certainly think they want to go there right away. I think they want to say, let's go soft. Let's cover these functions and let's cover those. What kind of political management at the regional level? This is what essentially I think stand from the summit in Uganda last year. So we must complete this. Those dots must be completed and agreed. Once they agree, they will say, for me, I will say, all of these managed at the regional level, but and you are welcome to differ with me. Me, given the option, I will say, go for the big one. This is the big Muhika. Now, What I repeat here, there can be no success in economic integration without success in political. And that's what I've just said. Now, to be given a chance, I will use the master stroke, the big stick, and say, establish a federation in order to have an efficient, effective, and sustainable common market. That's the way to do it. Anything else there will either be not be efficient or will be less effective than 100%, and certainly not sustainable. Eventually, you have to come to federation. So it is postponing the inevitable. But these are theoretical things. I think you can read them in the paper. But what it is the factors that promotes integration, and we have covered the formative factors. These are well known. For instance, developed by this author in 1993. Strong political will, strong regional institutions, and respect of the rule of law. If you don't have them in place, he said, no integration will in effect take place. You can keep on talking about it. It doesn't matter which level you choose among the schools, the PTA, common market, doesn't matter. If any of those three is missing, you won't start. You have not started. And my analysis is that in what's another set? This last set here also has been touched on in a number of ways in the discussion. These are maturation enablers. If you don't have them, you will start, this is whenever you start, off the blocks, these strategic principles for togetherness, interdisciplinarity are in the treaty. They include the variable geometry. Those who are not ready are still in, but they can lag behind. There is subsidiarity, all kinds of things. We worked on them. I checked that meeting where we have the principles of the new community. Those we have them. The issue is that we have not altogether operationalized them. How do you apply the variable geometry principle in practice? We have not there to that. So that is perhaps another area of attention by the Secretary to commission studies or ways of thinking themselves. Although in January 2007, I asked the then Secretary General, Juma Mapacho, and sitting next to him, how much thinking do you do at the Secretariat? He looked at me and said, Professor, you know, we've been together in this one since 89. None. So, so now it's going here and there. So we can think through it and see. Those principles in practice are the labor. So those you have, the environment factors, these are maturation enablers. They have been thrown around in the course of our discussion here by different contributors. But these ones are well known. Strong political will, how you bring it about, there's a gimmick in many ways, but a threat is the principal one, and the fastest to get it done. Once you have done that, you have allowed for those, then you need the development factors. Otherwise, you remain standing. To me, having a shared vision, there is no greater or more awesome force for integration than having a shared vision. People who have a shared vision will do anything. Even 2, 3 people. I told you when we decided to work for revival of East African Federation, 6 people. 6 East African, very hostile environment, crossing borders was very difficult. The border between Kenya and Tanzania was totally closed. The families here, they were guarding it. Heavy armored tanks. But we crossed it. And we talked to Hassan. He said, no, it's no good. He said, no. I talked to my brother, I already talked to my leader. So Tanzania, the big nutcracker was somewhere else. I already told you about it. So these things you have talked, this is not going to mention shared vision. The thing is you must make common purpose because this is not an easy route to trade. There will be problems along the way. And unless you share a strong vision of where you are going, like we want the whole of this region to become a middle income area by 2040 or 2030, unless you have something like that, you cannot. I don't like the current vision of the East African community because when I was talking to a joint session, that session of January 07, I circulated a piece of paper and asked members of the Secretariat, the research and so on, write down why you want to tell me why you are integrated. But I want as many responses, different responses as the responses themselves. Otherwise, we don't have a shared vision. We should play what's there, everybody will meet. If you ask our presidents why you're integrating, they'll give you different answers. That's what I'm going for. I can bet all my money on it. They would give you different answers. And if I asked you, if I did what I did in Nairobi, give me a piece of paper, you write down why you're integrating, I would get as many different answers as the responses I've got. Will this integrate us? No. People who cannot say why they are doing what they are doing, they are not doing it together. Until you are putting it together, you can say it like this is the motivation behind you, behind your spirit. You are not doing it. You are saying you are doing it. That's different. So this is, I box it because it's the most important. The other is decision making and be program, provision for unbalanced industrialization, and all. These are already been a problem in East Africa. Those you have to provide for. Private sector participation, creation of regional identity. I boxed this before we came, but has come up strongly like this. This is number 2. Shared vision and regional identity, they are really related. Otherwise, at the time of writing this paper, I counted over 200 attempts in Africa at some kind of cooperation, integration, which had gotten nowhere because there was no shared vision, there was no identity, or identity was assumed. Okay, let's quickly talk about East Africa integration. This was just basically here. The first thing was brought up by the principal, the other speaker who spoke before me. Basically, there is something called neo-functionalism. This is how the East African integration has been managed since 1900 until the old community collapsed in 1977. It was integration. It was not cooperation. So that is the choice. The choice we made, we didn't make it, was the post-governance. In 1900 was by the colonial powers then. Neo-functionalism, which is basically integration. Functionalism is cooperation. And in cooperation, the policy is not managed on a daily basis by politicians. It is managed by technocrats. In the integration, there must be policy managers on a daily basis at the regional level. That's why you have commissioners, for instance, at the European Commission. That's what they are political managers of the single market in Europe. We don't have, so that is where we can start. Say this happen. Then the second on the choice is that the problem has not ever been that the regional functions are not defined. They have always been defined. What has never been defined is final political authority. Who has final political authority on regional functions? The systems we have had since independence is not neo-functionalism. The political systems we have had since independence have been functionalistic. In other words, the states collectively try to manage, to politically manage the regional functions at the regional level. This is the most, it's like putting a square peg in a round hole. Because the two systems are totally different. So we must tell, we bold and tell the politicians, so you are trying to push the square peg into the round hole. You have consistently decided that you want to integrate into the neo-functionalistic approach. But the institutions you have, especially at the apex, for political management are functionalistic. You want to do it yourself, but who will do it on a daily basis? It has also, this has been said by Valabare, that we always think the affection route will take us there. That we are East Africans. I've heard this before many times from members of the family and even in the council. We are saying, yes, I've already said this, do a SWOT analysis and identify threats in the region and Africa in general. We want to switch to the necessity route for integration. That one I recommend strongly. We must have a study. List them, say this will happen. political structures of colonial, immediate after independence, and after revival. The three, when we are colonies, we were managed from Whitehall, so there was a single center. It was centralized, and the common market was managed through issuance of ordinances. And it was extremely efficient. The governors several just announced, it has been decided this will happen. Then it happened. I don't know why. You didn't hear that. This is a busy, that is yours, but every Bismarck model was the colonial one in East Africa. Centralized, ruthless. The Kabaka of Uganda in 1952, that's the king of Uganda, looked a bit hesitant about deepening of the common market and so on. He was quickly transferred to new residence in Uganda until 1955, when he considered all his executive powers except the few. Then he was restated as the Kabaka. And Sandro Kahe, who was the governor of Uganda then, had no time for fools, what he used to say. Now, after independence, the post-independence era was recent. How it is recent? Because in 1960, Marine General General had to look at that there were distortions in this market. Issued an ultimatum that unless these distortions which favor the white settlers in the common market of East Africa were corrected before Tanganyika's independence, Tanganyika was walking up to independence in December 61. But before that, well, in parallel, he had also said, but I'm willing to delay the independence of Tanganyika so that we and Kenya and Uganda can become independent on the same day. Then we create a federation and pronounce it on the same day. So that this center here remains to manage the market, hopefully equitably. Well, the first one didn't happen. Why? Because the British set up a commission of inquiry, and that's Jeremy who is going to be finished the money. Anyway, they set up a commission which made some recommendations, but the recommendations were not adequate. They were not adequate, and they did not create an effective manager or supervisor of the common market on a daily basis. And so all these consequences happened. The Reisman Commission of 61 recommended a pool for redistribution of funds to the members. Those who lost in the market would be compensated. That also became a very rich theater for battles at the regional level. You would say, I've lost $100 million. I say, no, it is not 100. It's more like $10,000. Just go on. Because the basis of this data is cooked and all that. So it became very difficult. So, in 1966, that didn't work. In 65, of course, Tanzania announced that since there was no remedy to the ills in the common market, they were quitting the common currency union. And thereafter, the Field Commission was set up. So it is the Field Commission which, out of which the Treaty of East African Cooperation of 67, which Professor Kaputi referred to, was born. It lasted over 10 years, 67 to 77. In fact, it was still born. So this was a still pass. What happened was that it was a cafeteria common market. What is a cafeteria common market or customs union? It is either customs union or a common market, where as we did at lunchtime, you pick what you like, and what you don't like, you leave on the table. So this is an anarchical application of the variable geometry principle. So if you look at our own customs union now, Uganda said, I will not pick everything in the CAT. These 100 items also for me are circumstances. These are made. Don't put them on the table. Kenya said, fertilizer will make subsidies. Free movement of people, vehicles into Tanzania? I don't know, not there. So you have got a cafeteria. That is and that's what happened with the old one as well. In the paper, I give you examples of what happened. Uganda was the first one on the plate. Moved out of this East African tourism unit. We had an article. We're now working on it to put it back again. And our minister referred to Minister of Foreign Affairs. Okay, well, the protocol, we're going to have single visa entry, blah, blah. We have a circuit in all of East Africa. You can come through Kenya, Tanganyika, Uganda, and you fly out. But Uganda, he said, this one on the cafeteria, I'm not taking it anymore. After independence, soon after, it was actually 66. 65, Tanganyika out of the common currency. 68, Uganda, free movement of labor. Non-skilled labor will be restricted. 73, East African income tax department. Kenya. No, this one has not been appointed. These guys in Tanzania have gone socialist, they're not contributing enough. So there, it went on like that. This is a cafeteria, breaking up. So this way, corporations were also messed up, and finally, the community collapsed. The fundamental reason was square peg in a round hole. Once somebody tell our presidents that that's what we are still doing, because the last part of hotels, we are doing the same. Yes, currently now. I've just said, I'll give you the conclusion. We are doing better, but not much better. Much better because we have no provision for political integration into the federation. So we can talk about political integration. That's why we're here. So we are doing better. In the old treaty of 67, there was nothing about political integration at all. No, because I've already said we don't have any supervision structures at the regional level for either the customs union or the common market. So the square peg is still in a round hole. Syndrome, not entirely good. Consequently, we know this. Most of the decisions of the CHC are not implemented. The legislature, Professor Kanyawara, this legislature is very important because we need bills, regional bills, regional laws and regulations for management of the common market. The laws for management of the common market cannot be enacted by the partner states. They must be enacted by the regional legislation. So we need it. But there is no executive. Who will draft the bill? Well, number 60, you used to do this. Why did they give you that role? You have to draft the bills. The bills are not drafted. We have a common market, bills. Here you have a judiciary without an executive. So, what the registrar was saying, I'm witness to that. I was in Arusha when what is talking about happened. Somebody was trying to remove a judge because he had a personal grudge. So I had, you can go to the judge, don't mind. That's what I was told. And this just, you mess up the whole process of East African integration in order to square a grudge with someone. It's not a strategy. Are we serious? I hope there are no, I hope the press has gone. I believe they haven't. This is come out. Okay, so now.
Prof, are you about to conclude?
Yes, yes, I was coming to that last thing. This one I've covered. Well, we have all these things. We have all of these articles which are not implemented. Well, we are supposed to harmonize policies. Article 8, 4, and 5. But I have to read that. I have to read this, this article. If you have a copy of the treaty, you can open it and read it here. But yes. Article 8, 5. Just be sure I'm not creating these words. Let's have reasons for us. They're not my words.
In pursuance of the provisions of paragraph 4 of this article, which maybe I should start with.
You start with 4.
Yeah, Article 4 reads, community organs, institutions, and laws shall take precedence over similar national ones on matters pertaining to the implementation of this treaty. And 5, in pursuance of the provisions of paragraph 4 of this article, the partner states undertake to make the necessary legal instruments to confer precedence of community organs, institutions, and laws over similar national ones.
Okay. On the regional integration, nothing known as the precedence principle. Precedence principle means if you are integrating the regional policies, organs, laws, regulations, practices, you name it, take precedence over national one on all similar issues. Then normally you execute, you debate this in a national parliament, execute the legal instrument, and you deposit it with the regional body to that effect. As when I was writing this paper, no partner state had done it. Can I be advised whether any partner state has done that? As of now? I assume not, because I did this over the weekend. So, because this Article 8 is on implementation of the treaty, that's the title. So we have not yet started integrating. Until you do that, you are still in the intergovernmental mode of the first presentation. You have not moved to the supranational mode, which is integration. You are in the cooperation mode. So we started off with cooperation in 1993, and institutionally, that's where we still are. Because we decided to move the treaty, we have not come, the move will come. Consequently, all these trade policies, industrial standards, monetary, all these were supposed to be harmonized into regional policies in readiness for a common market. Has not been done. Where it has been done, has not been implemented. Concluding remarks. The cafeteria I already talked about, current state. The one important thing is this directive which was given by the heads of state in November. Oh, sorry, but you are familiar with it. Basically, it directed the secretariat after they read the report of the team of experts, which I was privileged to work on with my colleagues, that the secretariat should produce a roadmap for establishment of political institutions identified by the team. We did identify some following that scheme. That if you want to manage customs union, you need an authority. Customs union, at regional level, and so on. So this is number one. The roadmap for establishing them. Formulate an action plan for operationalize the same. This is thanks to what untiring effort of our colleague here. And then, importantly, for the future, develop a model of the East African Federation and an action plan. So there is a real hope, because the heads of state have sanctioned the way forward. And then I wonder, Mr. Facilitator, by saying, okay, so now we can help the Secretariat by making some ideas on how they can carry out their job. So there are a few suggestions here. So go to the opportunity, and we could take this opportunity to attend a number of outstanding issues. Implementation of this Article 8 is still outstanding, the precedence principle. What you need now is to take those functions in that big picture which we saw, and divide the political roles between the EAC institution and the partner states, and make a proposition. If it is accepted by the partner states, then you have made somewhere. And then how you can manage EAC, development of EAC within ethics of African renaissance and the spirit of it, taking on board African values, cultural practices, and principles, and deal with the issue of decision-making mechanisms, or how to live together in diversity, or when you not agree. The reason again on ending this note is to sound a sense of urgency that Africa has never been so threatened in terms of resource management. This is very, this is what we shall cry to our president. You are sleeping while Rome is burning, and the fire has already started. I saw a weather night called Oil, entitled A Fresh Scramble for Africa. Fresh Scramble for Africa is on. So, in totality, what will come out of this exercise, I hope, would be a demarcation of sectors on which we have agreed will be managed at regional level, on which the EAC will have final sectoral jurisdiction. The purpose will be to manage the East African common market effectively, efficiently, and sustainably. To Mr. Facilitator, I would like to think, being a Christian, that God and the future, not before, will be on the side of such developments. I must end by punching the sky, which I normally could have done this since 1962, in the gesture of Kwame Nkrumah. Africa must unite pamoja tu faulu.